In this video, we'll be talking about augmentative and alternative communication, or AAC. AAC can be a wonderful bridge between those who have some expressive language challenges and connect them to their surrounding world. We do get a lot of questions about AAC at our Pasadena clinic at Here Center, and rightfully so. AAC are powerful tools for communication, and families want to know if it's something they need to consider for their child. And, while our speech team does work with clients who come in with AAC, and even we get some clients who we help get adjusted to their own AAC device, we actually don't do any AAC assessments or evaluations at our clinic, meaning that we do not have the means of telling families, okay, which AAC device is best for them. We do have some contacts that we would be happy to connect you with if that is something you're interested in. But if you're based in LA County, the best thing for you to do if you want to find an AAC specialist is to maybe ask your child's school or do a quick web search to see, what AAC SLPs are in your area. And our goal with this presentation is to give you just a broad introduction into AAC, especially if you're just starting to do some research about this topic. According to the AAC Institute, there are approximately 3.5 million Americans who have some sort of expressive language issue. Expressive language is how we express ourselves with words, gestures, body language, and so on. And a percentage of this 3.5 million, they also have additional physical disabilities. This limits their natural body movement and can affect how they gesture, maybe how they hold a pen to write or type with one or both hands. So imagine this. You're someone with maybe some expressive language issues and you're at the doctor's. You're trying to communicate to them about your health updates and maybe some concerns you've had. Or maybe you're visiting family for the first time in a long while and you want to update them on where your life's been. Maybe tell them about your latest dreams, accomplishments, and ideas. Or maybe you have a child who struggles to communicate their wants and needs at home or at school. How might someone with expressive language problems go about communicating? Well, they might use sign language. They might decide to write something down on a piece of paper or on a whiteboard. Or maybe they have a device that they use that generates speech when you press certain buttons. Those are all examples of augmentative and alternative communication, or AAC. And AAC is any form of communication that isn't speech. So these are tools, systems, or devices that help a person communicate when they cannot rely on their speech for whatever reason. They can be as simple as a gesture, like a thumbs up, maybe something like an eye gaze device that tracks your eye movements on the screen. That's on the high-end spectrum of AAC. AAC can be very low-tech, like a communication board with pictures or sign language, to something more high-tech like that eye gaze device I just mentioned, or a device that generates speech when you press certain buttons. AAC are important components of our daily lives. Did you know that you probably use some form of AAC on a regular basis? Well, writing something down on a Post-it or paper for someone, sending a quick message through text, or using a visual schedule for a child who's in preschool, these are some examples of AAC. These are all tools that we use to communicate information without speaking. So the first A in AAC stands for augmentative, and AAC is augmentative when it is used to supplement or support existing speech. When AAC is augmentative, it can make messages clear to listeners. The second A, or alternative, is when AAC is used in place of speech that is absent or not functioning. Think of a child who is nonverbal, perhaps a recent stroke victim or someone with a traumatic brain injury. They need ways of communication that take the place of speech. AAC exists to enhance communication for anyone with communication limitations. We all deserve a voice. Those with severe speech or language disorders, autism, cerebral palsy, and so on, or more temporary conditions such as injuries and strokes, can all benefit from using an AAC device. It can serve as a bridge. When supported by an expert of AAC, an individual who uses it either some of the time or all of the time, they may find success in expressing their needs and wants, participating in making their own life choices and expressing opinions, making and maintaining relationships, and making connections with others at school, in the workplace, and in their community. We've structured this introductory presentation into 4 different parts. So first we'll touch briefly on the history of AAC and its roots. Next, we'll look a bit more in depth into AAC, who it helps, and some of the methodology behind using the many options out there. Later, we'll look at the spectrum of AAC devices, from no-tech to high-tech, as well as some demo videos showing AAC in action. Lastly, we'll talk about what to do if you're considering AAC for a child or someone you know. And while we're not going to take a very deep dive into AAC's origins, we think it's important to just highlight just a few cool facts about the history of AAC. Alternative communication has been around since ancient Greece, believe it or not. So sign language is considered to be the oldest AAC system. The first written record of sign language was documented in ancient Greece in 5th century BC, and the second oldest is followed by Morse code, which was developed in the 19th century. So you can see there's quite a bit of gap between the alternative communication methods. The first actual known AAC device was co-developed in 1920 by F. Hall Rowe. He had cerebral palsy, and he helped create a board with words and letters on it that could be used to make sentences. This was an important tool that brought a voice to anyone who struggled to communicate. And communication boards like these are considered no or low-tech tools. If we jump 40 years into the 1960s, that's when we start to see some of the electric machines that were developed to produce speech. Those are considered mid or high-tech. A decade later, into the 1970s, we start to see the first portable AAC devices take off in the market. So speech generating devices, or SGDs, were all the rage, and they saw significant strides in the technology available. On the left, as you'll see here, this was known as the talking brooch. So the individual using this AAC device would clip a display onto their breast pocket, and with that portable keyboard, they would type out words that would be seen on that display on their breast pocket. So here they've typed hello. That's pretty cool, right? So AAC has come a very long way since then. Instead of talking brooches, we more commonly see tablets and other displays on the higher end of the tech spectrum. AAC certainly doesn't need to be this high-tech or expensive to be helpful, but it is really interesting to see how far it's come since the 1920s. So what are the goals of AAC, and how might this be incorporated with a child or adult who has some communication issues? Well, an AAC system will need to be very customized for that person, their specific needs, with their goals, and so on. Okay, so according to the AAC Institute, the goal of AAC is giving individuals a means of being able to say what they want to say, when they want to say it, and saying it as fast as possible. And although AAC is certainly very helpful for those who are unable to speak or have lost the ability to speak, please remember that AAC can help those with verbal skills too. They can help those who have some speaking ability and those who have some existing communication strategies. For example, you might have a child who doesn't speak very much, but they communicate with you through body language, pointing, or signing. That's a communication strategy. Any AAC introduced to an individual would be another mode of communication that they can access. So multimodal or multiple modes is a term that we want you to become familiar with. This is the approach that most SLPs will use when introducing an AAC device. I'm revisiting this slide that we saw earlier just to highlight the fact that humans were naturally sort of these multimodal communicators. During this video, you might have been switching between different modes of communication. You may have been answering a quick text message or email on the side. Maybe you're shooing away a dog or a cat who's asking for food. Those are all examples of different modes of communication. And we take for granted how easy it is for us to switch between all these modes in a given day. So when introducing a system to a child or adult, a speech therapist and other treatment teams will look at every mode of communication that exists for this person. So this might include vocalizations, word attempts, pointing to photos and objects, using body language, as well as their AAC system. These are all components that are going to be included in this multimodal system. And as I said, any AAC that is introduced to someone will be another mode in that system. And it's important to have multiple modes because, for example, someone with a disability, maybe they are using the AAC device on a daily basis, but at the end of a particularly tiring day, well, maybe they don't really want to be using the AAC device anymore. Maybe they don't want to look at another communication board, for example. After that long day, they may fall back on other modes of communication that they have. Maybe instead of using the device, they use pointing or use body language to communicate. And that's okay. So just know that because AAC is being introduced, it most likely won't be the sole means of communication. SLPs and treatment teams consider the full picture of someone's communication abilities. And having all of these modes ready to access actually helps communication become more successful in the long run. So AAC is very helpful for anyone experiencing mild to severe issues with expressive language. And while the American Speech Language Hearing Association does describe AAC as really, being ideal for those with severe expressive problems, the Center of Autism notes that AAC can be good for children with mild to moderate social or communicative issues. So we just wanted to highlight that there because we know that AAC is used often for kids with autism. So AAC systems in general help everyone, those with congenital or acquired disabilities, autism, genetic syndromes, strokes, and other temporary conditions, and so on and so forth, can be aided by AAC devices to bridge communication. The Center of Autism notes that using assistive technology or strategies can be very beneficial for children with expressive language issues. It can help them actively participate in the classroom learning environment and can allow them to demonstrate what they know and what they think. AAC devices, of course, they help with communication, decision-making, and just daily living. For example, on a picture-based communication system, you could have a visual schedule of what your child will be doing throughout the day. So after some training with the device or strategies, AAC can help your child or any individual become more independent in their communication. It can help decrease the frustration that comes with not being able to communicate clearly. The AAC does model language for children, and it's entirely possible to teach children expressive and receptive language while using AAC, even if they are nonverbal or if their speech is very limited. AAC can also provide a foundation for later language development. And with those last 2 points, there are some sort of, doubt and concern about whether or not children can actually develop good language if they're using an AAC. parents think, okay, how can my child develop language if they're depending on this picture board or this tablet to speak for them? AAC discourages speech, and my child will give up on using natural speech are one of the more common myths surrounding language development and AAC devices. A study by Light and Schlosser in 2006 found that AAC actually doesn't hinder speech. It can increase speech production. Another study by Kress found that AAC facilitates spoken language, as well as increasing social interaction, language skills, and, as stated, providing a model for speech. Waiting until children are school age is another myth surrounding AAC. Very young children just aren't ready for AAC. Well, it's not uncommon to see children under 3 successfully using, alternative strategies for communication and devices. You might have heard the suggestion of teaching infants and toddlers some sign language. For example, the sign for more when they want more of something. That's an example of AAC, because sign language is a form of alternative communication. Early implementation of AAC can aid in the development of natural speech and language, as well as increase vocabulary for children 3 years and younger. There are many types of AAC devices and strategies. What works for one person may not work for another. Speech teams will need to work with families to determine the best options, but in general, AAC tools fall on a spectrum of technology. Low tech, like communication boards and writing, will generally be more affordable and easy for speech professionals to DIY, compared to higher tech options like GoTalk devices or tablets. Those are going to be more expensive. But these are all very useful depending on the needs and goals of the individual. So there's another concept we want you to be familiar with, and that is called unaided versus aided AAC. So unaided AAC does not require a physical aid or tool. With unaided AAC, we're using our bodies to do the speaking for us, either through, as I mentioned before, facial expressions, gestures, sign language, or body language. So it's very much isolated to the person, the individual. Someone using aided AAC will be using tools or materials. Symbol boards, keyboards, or alphabet charts, they're all forms of aided communication. The medium and high-tech devices, such as tablets, those are also forms of aided communication. So in general, for no or low tech, they're going to be paper-based, affordable, and can be DIY'd. You can even find some downloadable boards on the internet if you did a quick search. Within the aided, low-tech or no-tech AAC, you have things like PECS, which is a communication system, writing, pointing to boards. Unaided includes things such as gesture, sign language, or eye pointing. So these are very much within the individual. They don't need a tool or device to do these things. It's very much themselves communicating. So in general, mid-tech AAC options tend to be battery operated without the sort of high-level processing that you see in computers or tablets. So this button on the left can record phrases or words that can be easily pushed. And on the right, you'll see another model of a device we saw in the video. So this has 20 buttons instead of 9. So there's a GoTalk 9, this is a GoTalk 20. 9 may be enough for one individual, or 20 might be more comfortable. It really depends on the person and what they need. And high-tech AAC has the most features and software options. It also requires more training and tends to be the most expensive out of the bunch. In general, high-tech AAC offers complex, sophisticated technology, dynamic, colorful displays, synthesized voices, and tend to be rechargeable. So these include things such as laptop computers, tablets, and PDAs. Anyone who struggles with meeting their daily communication needs may be a candidate for an AAC device. There really are no prerequisites. And speaking with an AAC expert really is the best way to gauge where your child or person is at and what sorts of tools and strategies can best support them. Has your child had a speech evaluation recently? Are they on track or behind in their speech and language development? How can you tell? Well, for starters, you might want to watch some of our previous webinars. So this one about school staff and how to identify candidates for speech therapy, speech, hearing, and your child, and our bilingual webinar, which is My Child Speaks Two Languages, what you need to know about their development. These are some presentations that you might want to look at just to see, how is your child doing with their speech and language. These are all on our channel, so you can just click on our logo below to look at our complete library of videos. We also have a webinar playlist. So if you're just curious about your child's speech and language development, and maybe you want to learn some information before you schedule a speech screening or evaluation, please watch those videos. They'd be really helpful for you. So after you've visited a physician to rule out any potential health concerns, and perhaps on their recommendation, you may want to seek out an AAC evaluation from an experienced SLP. If you want to help your child get an AAC device, maybe it's sort of a mid or high-tech device, we would really recommend that you would reach out to the child's school first, because they are supposed to help get the child equipped with that sort of technology, if they're going to a public establishment. But if their child is really young, like 0 to 3, early intervention services are something that's available in each state, and they include assessments, treatments, and equipment that can be offered to you and your family at little to no cost. We recommend that you search the early intervention information by state. And then for school-age children, depending on if it's through school or medical purposes, they'll need to be proved necessary. So the AAC must be proved necessary in order to be added on to an IEP or other treatment plans. So according to the ASHA, IEP teams are obligated to consider AAC devices when a child's communication, when their limitations impact the child's ability to perform well in school. So basically, we recommend to reach out to the school directly, see what sorts of assessments they can do for assistive technology that could help your child. There are also many grants and scholarships for AAC out there if your school is unable to fund the AAC device. And we'll link those in the description below, some resources that we think you might find helpful. So adults with disabilities, they actually don't have an entitlement to assistive technology. So funding will include various insurance options as well as vocational rehabilitation. So each state has their own Office of Vocational Rehabilitation, and these can include programs that offer ways to acquire AAC, either through cash loans, rent-to-own, or buying used. If going through insurance, you might need to request letters from physicians, speech therapists, or behavioral therapists that can confirm that there is a need for an AAC device. So just prepare to request that if needed. So in sum, anyone with expressive speech issues can benefit from using an AAC device. And there is a wide spectrum of AAC devices, from no-tech to mid-tech to high-tech, and there really is something for everyone to be included in their sort of communication toolbox. Schools or medical insurances may need to see proof or need for an AAC device. For parents, we recommend you reach out to the child's school directly and see what sorts of AAC evaluations and alternative technology communication services are available. They'll usually have something for you. Also, if your child is on the younger end, reach out and look into the early intervention programs. And for adults, consider your state's rehabilitation service programs. And then, of course, reach out to your private insurance and see if they can help you with acquiring an AAC device if you need it. So we know we kind of did this really quickly, but we just hope this was a nice comprehensive introduction into AAC. If you have any questions about this or other topics, feel free to send us an email to our email address below. And yeah, we hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you for watching this presentation.